After the nourishing conversation with Mrs. Ukoh of 1qfoodplatter, of course I'm going to be cooking something out of her own book. She's the only guest that has their own cookbook. So this is Memories on a Platter, which is an amazing book that captures Nigerian culture. It has certain parts about her life, and it is one of the most beautifully photographed books that I've seen out of Nigeria. This is a treasure trove. It's a book about culture, and it really is simple. The recipes are easily accessible, and it just it's a treasure. It really is a treasure. I'm so proud of this book, and I'm so glad that I have my own copy. Everybody tries to borrow it. This is one that I do not let out of my sight. We're going to be making Ugba sauce from this book, and we're going to be serving it with boiled plantain. So I'm going to be making Ugba sauce from Memories on a Platter. Ugba is oil bean, and there's a fermented oil bean which a lot of people have access to, and it's typically, you find it Ugba on its own, which is like a palm oil dense dish. Sometimes you see it in abacha, which is made with cassava, and then my friend was also telling me you add it in okra, you see it in isiewu, you see it in nkwobi, so cow head and cow foot. This time her book recommends serving it with boiled yam or plantain. I'm going to go with the boiled plantain route because I don't like yam. Yeah, sue me. I just don't like yam. So we're going to be doing it with boiled plantain, and it's pretty easy. Let me just walk you through some of the ingredients that we're going to be using. I've tweaked it a little bit to suit me. I happen to know that Mama, that's Mrs. Ukoh, eats a lot of pepper. Her daughter does at home as well, and pepperless. So I've swapped out the crushed pepper that was supposed to be used in this recipe for some tomatoes, but I'm going to be using some pepper oil, some chili oil. So to make the Ugba sauce, you're going to need stock. I have here some chicken stock. She uses beef stock, but I'm using chicken stock. I have the oil bean, which is here, which is the Ugba, which has a very interesting flavor. We're going to use palm oil, some dried fish, some dried red prawns, ground crayfish, the chili oil that I talked about a little bit earlier, my diced tomatoes, some onions, some salt, a little bit of water, and some scent leaf. This scent leaf is pretty special because it was given to me by my mother-in-law. Scent leaf is African basil, and a lot of it is sold in Lagos, but my mother-in-law introduced me to the scent leaf from Owo, which is in Ondo State, which is where my husband is from. And obviously I get a whole bunch of it, and what I do is we just pick it off of the stalks and I put it in the freezer, and it is so potent. It's one of the most potent scent leaf basils varieties that I've ever encountered. So let's go. So get your pan on the stove, on the heat. I get very agitated when I see the way people do things with the handles of pans. Please don't do this. Don't do this. Make sure you stick your pan all the way on the inside so that the handle is inside and away from people that are moving around. Some of the biggest kitchen accidents, especially when you have children around, are people walking into the kitchen and then they just run by, tummies will hit the handle, something happens to the handle. So please always turn your handle inside, away from where you're standing. So I have my pan on the heat. I'm going to add palm oil, right? Now, a lot of palm oil is excellent. It really is excellent. There's a lot of controversy around palm oil in the West, but I think the reason why I will not demonize that. It comes from a place of not knowing, and also it comes from a place of the palm oil that they're talking about being the ultra refined palm oil. So they won't talk about this kind of palm oil. It will be refined to the point where it's used in everything from making car products to everything else. That's the palm oil that they demonize. But our own red oil, fantastic, God sent, just nature's own gift to us Africans that know the deal. So I'm just going to add some. Again, same thing with that I've talked about with honey. Palm oil these days, sometimes you're not exactly sure what the source is. I hear stories about people getting their palm oil from Enugu, all the way from out of Lagos, just because it's been adulterated, right? So just make sure that you go with a brand that you are comfortable with, and then this brand, like, look, no sediment, no black things, nothing. And then if you want to know the brand that I swear by, please send me a message. I'm more than happy to give you all of the details. Proudly Nigerian. So I have some palm oil in there. And then I'm just going to let it get hot. We're not going to smoke it, right? We're not taking it like you want to make ofada sauce or anything like that. We just want to treat it like you're trying to make a regular stew. So it's not getting to smoking point, and there's not going to be fire alarms going off anywhere. So Mama, Mrs. Ukoh recommends at this point, once the oil is heated through, we're just going to add our onions. Now she adds onions and the chopped peppers. I'm not doing the peppers, like I said. I'm simply going to add my chopped tomatoes. You can add all of these onions. I like onions quite a bit. If you have people that don't like onions, this is chopped. I know that you can just use a mortar and a pestle or a blender and just do a rough chop. I'm going to fry the onions a little bit just so they get, you won't be able to see them go translucent because you're using palm oil, but I would say fry this for about 5 minutes. After that, I will add my tomatoes and then fry that again for another 5 minutes or so. So the onions have been going for about 5 minutes. I'm going to add my chopped tomatoes now. And then just give everything a good stir and then fry this for another 5 minutes. By this time, the onions will have softened sufficiently more, and then the tomatoes will also have started doing their own thing in terms of reducing. Fun fact about tomatoes, in Nigeria we tend to see what we use to make stews, right, which are typically called Roma tomatoes here. But do you know that there are over 1,500 varieties of tomatoes? I can name quite a few because I'm a grower. You guys know about the hashtag Garden to Table Nigeria movement that I started. And so I've grown a lot, from little teardrop ones, yellow ones, and purple ones, and heirloom ones, and all sorts of fun stuff. But I think it's very interesting. There are over 1,500 varieties of tomatoes. How many have you tried? So I'm stirring this. Just give it another minute or two, and then we'll begin to add all of the other ingredients. Had our tomatoes and our onions frying for about 10 minutes in the palm oil. Now it's time to add all of the things that will give this some flavor. I'm going to start out with some dry fish. This is so you buy it in the market and it is obviously very dry. So what you need to do is, I usually pour some hot water over it first and let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. That way I can take off the skin, remove the bones, check and make sure you don't have any bugs or things inside. And there are all sorts of varieties. Use the kind of dry fish that you like. This is catfish. This is dried catfish. Then, according to Mama's recipe here, we need to also add our prawns. These are the big red crayfish, they call them, right? But they're actually red prawns. I've taken the tails off, I've taken the head off, and I'm going to add this in as well. And then ground fish. Powdered ones, just use some. I always have this in my freezer because you always use it for everything from beans to, well, anything that you feel like, really. Even if you're making like a red stew, just add a little bit of crayfish or add a little bit of scent leaf to your sauces, and it just makes a world of difference. Just makes it a little bit different, you know, elevates it some. Now we have to add our stock cubes, our salt, and then fry. Now I'm not using stock cubes, I'm using some stock because I even want some of the liquid in this that will also, you know, make it a bit more saucy. So I'm supposed to be opening up my mason jar. There we go. And people keep, there's no way to make chicken stock look funky, so I'm using it in a mason jar because it just makes it look a little bit different. So I've added just a little bit of that stock water and then a little bit of salt. Not too much. Again, it's easier to add salt than it is to take away, so you can always add some. And then at this point, I'm just going to stir everything properly and then fry this for a good 10 minutes. And then we'll come back into the next steps. So you can see that our sauce is looking good so far. It's drying. Now it's time to add the star ingredient, which is the oil bean, which is the Ugba. It is a very interesting flavor. I know some people that don't like Ugba. I know some that do. I know a lot of people from the East are used to it while others are not. So I've added the Ugba, and remember when I said earlier that I was doing away with Mrs. Ukoh's recommended pepper, like pounded pepper. So I'm just going to add a little bit of chili oil. It's yellow habanero oil. It has an amazing flavor, but it also gives you the heat that you need. Then I'm going to stir everything, and this now needs to cook for about 3 minutes. And then we'll just add the scent leaf, which is the finishing touch to it. Recommended, of course, that you eat this with boiled yam or plantain. I said it earlier, we're going to be having it with plantain because I don't like yam. Now, another thing I'm going to do is she recommends adding a little bit of water, which I have here, and that I guess will help to soften the ugba just a tad. Now, because I added tomatoes earlier and I added chicken stock instead of stock cubes, I'm not adding as much water as she recommends here. So that's the beauty about cookbooks and recipes. Just adjust as you go along. If you feel like this recipe works well the first time in a particular way, then tweak it a little bit. Just use your cooking sense and tweak it according to what works best for your family. So I'm going to give this a thorough toss, and then I'm going to cover it and let it cook for another 3 minutes, just so it softens a little bit, and then we'll finish it off with our scent leaf and it will be time to dig in. Alright, so our ugba sauce has been going for a couple of minutes. I'll give it one more stir, and then now is the time to add the scent leaf. So I'm adding that there, and whenever I add scent leaf, I don't overcook it. I'll just give it a quick stir, and then in about a minute I'll turn it off and then let the steam do the rest of the cooking. So that way you still have the fragrance of the scent leaf, you still have the nutritional content, but you're not overcooking it to death. This looks good. It smells amazing. I still cannot believe we have not invented smell-o-vision yet, but it is what it is. So just a minute, and then I'll turn the heat off, and like I said, use the residual steam to soften off the scent leaf, and then we'll be able to dig in. So our sauce is ready, and it's time to plate it. So what I'm going to do is just move it out of the way, or rather move this out. You guys, have you noticed I'm ambidextrous? I'm sure in the course of all of this you notice I can use both of my hands, even though my left hand is a stronger hand. So I'm going to plate now. We're going to be serving it with boiled plantain, and then we're going to dig in. Okay, it's time to serve, and I have here boiled plantain, which I've already obviously boiled and cut into pieces. Interesting thing about plantain, I don't like super soft boiled plantain, but I will not eat hard fried plantain, if that makes any sense. So the perfect kind of plantain for this is that nice hard plantain that you boil with a little bit of salt. Now I am going to go ahead and dish this up. This smells amazing. It looks amazing. It has the dried fish, and it has the crayfish, and it has all of the yumminess. This is a meal on its own. Feel free to cuddle up or settle down on the couch and use your hand to get busy with this. Like, no finesse, no trying to be all prim and proper. Let's just get this going. Smells amazing. Smells absolutely amazing as well. See which one you prefer, whether you prefer it with yam or prefer it with plantain. And here we have it. This is ugba sauce, oil bean sauce, from Mrs. Ukoh's book. Fantastic book. This is the page actually. This is ugba sauce, and from Memories on a Platter. And this is our finished product. This is boiled plantain with ugba sauce. Plantain is a Nigerian national dish, but ugba is prevalent in the eastern part of Nigeria. This is a great dish to introduce people to ugba, and it is comfort food, it is wholesome, it is nutritious, and it is pretty yummy.